Hi, my name is Dr. Eric Plasker, and welcome to this presentation on becoming a least vulnerable person. Yes, we are in the middle of a very challenging time in our society, of course, with this COVID-19 situation. And we have learned, of course, all of us, we see it on the news, we see it in the media, everywhere we read, it is universally true that the people that are being affected by this virus more than any other are what has been called the most vulnerable people, which means that that small segment of the population that are most vulnerable, that they are being affected, they can get sick, they can get not just this COVID-19 virus, but the common cold, they can get the flu more than any other person because they are the most vulnerable people. Well, we want you, since you are the majority and you have the ability to make changes to your life to become less vulnerable, we put together this presentation on how you, regardless of your circumstance, whether you're a most vulnerable person right now or whether you're as healthy as you could possibly be, that we know scientifically, we know through research, we know that there are things that you can do, that your family can do to become least vulnerable people. And so this entire presentation is going to look at most vulnerable versus least vulnerable so that you can make the changes that you know you need to make based on what we know to be true to live the best life that you possibly can, 100% for 100 years, as we say, and be able to be resistant to not just this virus, but any virus or bacteria that may come your way. So I want you to know that I am a very compassionate person and a very compassionate doctor, and I work with people, have been working with people for a long time to help them get healthy. And so this presentation, while you will see that I become very, very passionate at times about certain things, certain issues, certain statistics and science and research that I quote for you, I am also going to come from a very passionate place. Don't misconceive my passion. My passion is truly to support you and your loved ones function at your highest level for a lifetime so that you can get through this crisis situation and also any other situation that comes up in the future. So again, I will come from a place of compassion, sensitivity, thoughtfulness. You'll also notice that periodically I'm looking over there and I'm not looking at you, and that's because I have some cue cards set up for me. Not like actual cards, by the way, they're on a computer monitor here that will help me stay on track to be able to be effective with you as we go through this presentation. And it's going to come from truth. It's going to come from experience and wisdom. And so obviously we have heard that the most important question here is who is most vulnerable and why are they most vulnerable? And let's take a look at that. And we know that the seniors are the most vulnerable people. We hear these statistics about deaths, the numbers of deaths in places like Italy. I love that country, been there many times. I've traveled and spoken all over the world, Italy many times. Other countries that we have seen. The average rate of death or the age of death in Italy, the last time I checked, just a few days ago, was 79 years old, which just so happens to be the average age of death in the United States of America. So a good toll of the deaths that we are seeing are people that are in the super senior area, these people that are the most vulnerable people. Now, of course, we are compassionate for those people. We should care for those people. We should love and serve and support those people with all of our heart and all of our might, of course. And at the same time, we need to understand that the majority of the people in the world will not even be affected by this virus, that we need to do as individuals. The best thing that we can do as individuals is to become less vulnerable, to become least vulnerable people so that we don't expose other people and we're not susceptible to this or any other virus. And so the seniors, yes, these are part of the most vulnerable group. We also have people that have suppressed immune systems. They have been diagnosed with another condition of some kind of immune condition. I was in the airport traveling to some city somewhere to give a talk, and I saw a big billboard. It was Venus Williams, I believe, talking about how 54 million people have been diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. That is an insane number of people in the United States of America that has 310 or 20 million people. To have 54 million of them with rheumatoid arthritis, something is wrong. We have created a most vulnerable society because of some of the things that we're doing. We're going to cover all of these things, and you'll be able to make some changes, simple changes that will be good for you and your family as you learn about these situations. But if you can imagine, if 54 million people have rheumatoid arthritis or some form of rheumatoid arthritis, that doesn't include the rest of the people that may have cancer or heart disease or diabetes. And when you start adding all of those up, the level of sickness that we have in this country, we've got to change it by all of us taking the responsibility to become less vulnerable. If you're a parent, you want to raise a least vulnerable family, a family that is not susceptible because of the way that you have chosen to take care of yourselves. And so important that we take a mind shift here to think differently about these things so we can get back to work and life as usual and enjoy this beautiful country and all of this beautiful planet that we have available to us if we just not be afraid of the viruses and the bacteria that are out there in the world, because we know that the way we have lived make us much less vulnerable, least vulnerable people. And so we know that people that are dealing with other health conditions, they are more vulnerable. Let's take a look at some specific things that you can do no matter what your age right now that can identify you as a more vulnerable person so that you can make choices to be least vulnerable. And the first thing that I want to cover is something that I choose it because everybody could benefit from this. You probably don't even realize that sitting too much makes you a more vulnerable person. When you are stuck in a chair and you are not moving your spine and your nervous system gets trapped and your stress levels from being in a specific position go way up significantly because you have lactic acid building up in your body, you become a more vulnerable person. In fact, when you look at the statistics, they're staggering. Americans specifically sit for 11 hours every day. We know that it's causing all kinds of health problems, over $1 trillion worth of all kinds of health problems, to heart problems, to blood pressure problems, to spinal problems, vertebral subluxation, interferences in the way that the mobility of your discs and your nerves work. So expensive, these problems, and they are making you a more vulnerable person. So you become more susceptible to any of these things that might be happening in the world, like a new virus or like a new strain of flu that doesn't affect maybe people like you. If you're a less vulnerable person or a least vulnerable person, it might not affect you and it might not affect me, but it's going to affect the person that tends to get everything because they are a more vulnerable person. We need to help those people understand that they can make choices to become least vulnerable people. So sitting is a big thing. Get up out of your chair, get moving. Those of you that are sitting in your chair on technology and you look at your posture and the stress levels that you're putting on your body and how you're putting your neck in an awkward position to cause stress in your spine and stress in your body on many different levels that can affect the way your body fights off infections. It can affect the way that your body resists forces that may be coming out you in the world. This is a very simple change that every one of you can make. And if you are addicted right now to the news and the bad news and the insanity of the news, and you are on your chair, you are making yourself a more vulnerable person by worrying about everything, as you'll see in a minute. And you're also making yourself more vulnerable by sitting down constantly waiting for the next report. Listen, get up, get moving, stretch out, get your whole body functioning the way that would make you a much healthier person and a least vulnerable person by getting out of the chair and getting your butt up, moving around. Next, sunshine. We have a beautiful day out here. We're in Georgia. I'm looking outside right out that window over there. It is gorgeous outside today. It's a sunny day, and many of you may not be aware that sunshine is the best source of vitamin D. And so when you go outside and you expose yourself without sunscreen to vitamin D, 15, 20, 30 minutes a day minimum, what happens is it builds your immune system. We know, all the research has shown that vitamin D is good for your immune system. So why is this important? If you're sitting all the time and you're sitting inside all the time, then you are double dose, making you a more vulnerable person, when if you just got up and started moving and got some sunshine, you would make yourself a least vulnerable person. And all of us, this is something that all of us can do right now without endangering anybody else. And watch, when all of us become less vulnerable or least vulnerable, then it doesn't matter what bugs are floating around. Remember, it's like 0.1% of the population to 2 or 3% of the population may be exposed to this, and a smaller percentage will die. So don't be afraid necessarily of the exposure, because if you are a least vulnerable person and you get it, your body will fight it off. And so very important information. Again, obesity, another something that all of us can pay attention to. There are some of you that maybe you're in good shape, maybe you're healthy, maybe you're functioning super duper well and you're fit. You can make changes and tell people in your life that they can make changes to not be obese, to make them more functional, because we know that obesity makes you a more vulnerable person. So if you're sitting on the couch all the time and you're not getting any sun and you're also overweight, you put yourself in a position to panic because you become a more vulnerable person. We don't want you to be vulnerable. We want you to be healthy and strong. Not just for today, but for the long haul. We want you to get up and get moving and start to not losing weight, but eliminating weight by changing your life. You know, I remember there was a time in 2002 that I was just about 60 pounds heavier than I am today. And I did not lose the weight. I did not go on a diet. I eliminated close to 60 pounds and have kept it off permanently because I changed my life. I didn't go on a yo-yo diet. You know, we have podcasts on this. If you go to the 100-Year Lifestyle podcast, we have getting off the roller coaster. We have making changes and all kinds of ways to help you be fit. We have setting long-term 100-year goals, things like that, compelling vision, all kinds of ways to help you make changes that are long-term. Hey, if I could do it, you can do it. And by making some of these changes starting right now, you will make yourself a less vulnerable, least vulnerable person, and you will no longer be susceptible or more vulnerable like the people that don't take care of themselves in the right way. This is not rocket science. We want you to make these changes right now because we want our entire society to not have to shut down the world because there are people that are super susceptible that are not doing things to take care of themselves appropriately. Next, remember, compassion. I'm coming from a place of compassion and love. Sometimes the passion kicks in. Don't let it get in the way of you hearing the importance of you making changes. Next, smoking. We all know that smoking is bad for you. Did you know that smoking also makes you more susceptible to disease? It makes you more susceptible to catching bacteria and viruses because it lowers your immune system. See, all of the things that we're talking about that make you more susceptible, more vulnerable, these are things that affect your immune system in a negative way. So the sitting, the not going outside, the being obese, and of course smoking, they impact your immune system in a negative way. So those of you that are smoking, there's never been a better time to quit, because quitting smoking will strengthen your immune system and make you a least vulnerable person. When you look at the statistics, it is staggering. We know that smoking is known to compromise equilibrium balance of the immune system. It increases the risk of immune and autoimmune disorders. And you may not have known this, but smoking also cigarettes contain 7,000 chemical compounds. We have an article on this on 100yearlifestyle.com to empower you to quit. It's about smoking. It's about vaping. There's a couple of different articles that will empower you to make the changes that you know you need to make. And there's another article I'm going to tell you about that I think will also be supportive of you making changes. We talk about it a lot on the podcast. It's called The Movie of You. Great article where you watch yourself like you're watching a movie. You create self-awareness and you realize that, you know what? Wow, I'm in the middle of making a choice right now that is going to make me a much more vulnerable person. Whereas I need to stop doing what I'm doing right now, make a choice in the present to make me a least vulnerable person. And that is literally the simplicity of change. It's simple, not always easy, because you have to have willpower. You have to have courage. And at the same time, if you're willing to make these changes, anybody can make these changes to make them a least vulnerable person. We've seen people who have implemented these strategies where they have lost 100 pounds, eliminated over 100 pounds. We've seen people that couldn't run. All of a sudden, now they're running 3, 5, 7, 10, 12 miles or even marathons. We see it all the time, and it's regardless of your age. You can make choices that take you from being a most vulnerable person and have you become a least vulnerable person because you made these changes and made these choices. The next one, and this is really important, and it has to do with seniors. And more importantly, if you are not a senior, it has to do with you if you take any medication at all. And it's a concept called polypharmacy, where you are on multiple medications. If you are on multiple medications, it is a danger to your immune system. It can lower your immune system. It could decrease your level of immune function. It is well documented. What we suggest that you do is that you do some homework for yourself, that you go to drugs.com and you start to look up, if you are on any medications, you start to look up a medication and you say, okay, I'm on this medication, and you look it up and look to see if it has an impact on your immune system. And when you go to this website or other websites that may give you the same information, you go there and it'll say side effects for the consumer, that's you. And you'll read the list of side effects. But then if you dig deeper, it will say side effects for the healthcare provider. And that's where you could really dig deep to see what are the changes that this medication is making to your immune system and your immune system function. What's cool about this is that when you get this self-awareness, and when you go one drug and then a second drug and a third drug and a fourth drug, which, by the way, the average person in the United States is on anywhere from 4 to 5 medications if they're a senior. And we're seeing more and more that people that, even if they're not seniors, we're seeing kids. We had a patient in our practice that we just found out the other day, a new practice member, a 10-year-old girl on Zoloft. Come on. Listen, I have a problem with that and the parents are doing what the doctors are saying, and I'm not mad at anybody. Here's that passion again. I'm mad at the concept that we're not doing everything to avoid medication first, especially a drug that can be very mind-altering, dangerous, like Zoloft, that I don't believe was ever tested for use on a 10-year-old, for safety on a 10-year-old. And what's important for you to understand is that if you are taking medication and you're a younger person, if you don't make the lifestyle changes like we often talk about in the 100-Year Lifestyle, like we're talking about in this presentation, then what happens is that you are setting yourself up for a long-term use of these medications, which none of them were tested for decades worth of use. And we have no idea. You are a human experiment. And we do know that people are living longer in spite of this insanity and this crisis. People are living longer all over the world. The only country where that has leveled off is the United States, where we have more drug use than any other country in the world by far. We are setting ourselves up for neurological damage, all kinds of organ and system damage, because none of these medications were tested for long-term use. So you need to take matters into your own hand. You need to do your homework, because if you're on multiple medications, 2, 3, 4, 5 medications, and each one of them is affecting your immune system in a certain way, there's probably not testing or minimal testing to see how these drugs are interacting with each other from an immune system perspective. So if these things that we're talking to you about can help you to make changes that will support your immune system, number one, if you have to stay on a medication, then your immune system will get stronger because you're making these changes. And if you don't need the medication because you've made some of these lifestyle changes, then you're going to be certainly much better off. And when you start to do the research and you start to make some changes, bring this information to the doctors that prescribed you the medication and let them know that you would like to discuss a different plan that would help you be more immune confident, a less vulnerable person, because you've been able to eliminate 1 or 2 or 3 or all of the prescribed medications because you've made the lifestyle changes that are good for you for the long haul. And some of you, you know what? Listen, maybe you have a condition that you require some type of medication for the long term. That's okay. If that's true for you, then at least you will be doing the lifestyle things to support you in making your immune system as strong as possible, making you a much least vulnerable person. Now, I want to give you some important perspective on the actual numbers that are happening out there, because these numbers, when you look at the numbers of deaths and the numbers of people that are getting sick, when you compare them to other situations, it is very concerning whether or not you make these least vulnerable, most vulnerable types of choices here, because you don't want to put yourself in a situation that if you are already susceptible and you get this virus, that you go to a hospital, for example, where you may put yourself in jeopardy because of the situation in hospitals where maybe they're understaffed, maybe there are lots of people there. When you make these changes, you're protecting yourself and avoiding potential places that could actually make you sick and contribute to the likelihood of not just getting this virus and fighting it off internally, but actually having it become more serious because you're exposed to environments that are less healthy. And let me give you an example. This is an example of hospital-acquired infections, which all of you know about it. We hear about it in the news, probably not enough. It should get way more attention, in my opinion, than this COVID-19 should be getting. And why? And by the way, there's an article on this on 100yearlifestyle.com also. It's called Superbugs and the War on Germs. When you look at the statistics, and these are staggering, by the way, that 1 in 25 people in the U.S. contracts a hospital-acquired infection that results in billions of wasted dollars, but more importantly, and this is a staggering number, by the way, 90,000 deaths a year. That means over the last decade, we're talking about 900,000 deaths from hospital-acquired infections. Now, a hospital-acquired infection is an infection that you get in the hospital that you did not have when you went into the hospital. Now, there's reasons for that. One reason is that people in the hospital are more vulnerable people. They have previous conditions, things like that. That's the first thing. The second thing is that because of the constant antibiotic use, from the soaps to the scrubs to the sprays to the pills, we have created a superbug dilemma problem that these are infections, these super infections are not treatable by anything that we know of. And they are man-made. They are made because of this overuse of antibiotics. I remember as a kid, if you had any kind of sniffle, no matter what color was coming out of your nose, you got an antibiotic, even though viruses, which was most of those things, most of those sniffles, are not affected by antibiotics because antibiotics treat bacteria. So for many people, they have found themselves with all kinds of digestive problems, gut problems because of overuse of antibiotics, things like that. And so what's important for you to understand, that if you are a more vulnerable person right now because of your health and your life, if you end up catching this virus and you have to go to a hospital, you are in an environment that is filled with superbugs to the point of 246 hospital-acquired deaths every day. That's a lot of deaths when you compare it to 9 deaths a day from COVID-19. And so if you end up acquiring COVID-19, if you're less vulnerable because you're making the changes to take care of yourself, you're less likely to need a hospital and you're less likely to put yourself in a situation where you are overwhelming the system, and you are less likely to catch one of these super infections that is already killing 50 times, 100 times, a lot more people. I haven't done the math here, but you get the idea. Way more people dying from this than of COVID-19. So why not avoid that situation because you're making yourself a least vulnerable person? The next one that I think is important as it relates to bacteria, we have a harmony with bacteria. Bacteria are everywhere. There's no real reason to be a germaphobe, by the way. If you understand that we are surrounded and filled up with bacteria, we need bacteria to help us digest food. We need bacteria to help us keep our skin healthy and to keep our gut healthy. And we all know this because now over the last decade, one of the most obvious and prominent nutritional products that is on the market in almost every health food type of store is probiotics. What are probiotics? They're good bacteria that people are taking to offset the imbalances between the bad bacteria and the good bacteria that may have occurred from stress, imbalances that may have occurred from antibiotic use. And so when you understand that bacteria are not good or bad, it's the balance of them that can be good or bad, then we understand that the importance of keeping our bodies, keeping our nervous systems, keeping our health, keeping our immune system, keeping ourselves in balance is the most important thing that we can do because it makes us a least vulnerable person if we're in balance. The numbers are staggering, by the way. It's in an average person age 20 to 30, just as an example, that weighs 154 pounds. They have 39 trillion bacterial cells living among 30 trillion human cells. So we have more bacterial cells that are on and in our body than we actually have human cells. They are essential. Don't be a germaphobe. It's important that you keep yourself in balance. Such an important thing. You know, as a chiropractor practicing for 35 years with my colleagues and affiliates that we work with, one of the things that we have seen over time, everywhere we go, that people that are out of balance are broke. You've all heard the expression, I'm sure, that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. The problem is that we have defined broke, this nursing home generation, this older generation of people. They have defined broke as serious life-threatening disease or severe excruciating pains. No, that is way too late. That is crisis motivation. The truth is that when you are out of balance, you are broke. We see it in the spine, we see it in the nervous system, and it is also completely true when it comes to the balance of bacteria in your body, antibiotics versus probiotics, good bacteria and bad bacteria. So it's very important that you not be a germaphobe and take a step back from that, take a few deep breaths, and start to make choices that bring you back into balance, that make you a least vulnerable person. Next, again, this is data from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and it has to do with suicides and accidental overdoses from opioids. This is a staggering statistic. It breaks my heart. I know people that have taken their own life. I know a lot of our doctors that we work with and friends and family members that have taken their own lives because they went in for procedures and things like that. They were prescribed opioids, ended up becoming addicted and couldn't get off of them and ended up taking their own life. I am so brokenhearted for so many of the families that we have seen, the people that we have seen that have lost loved ones. Listen, this is a lot of people, by the way. This is 303 suicide deaths every single day compared to 9 every day from COVID-19 people. Listen, I'm compassionate for anybody that loses somebody. My mom just last September had a car accident and she was killed as a result of that car accident. Listen, nobody wants to lose somebody that they love. I know what it feels like. It is heartbreaking. And it is also important that we keep the perspective that is so important. The reaction that we are having to this is destroying, creating so much stress amongst business owners and individuals and families. Like, how are they going to survive the quarantines and how are they going to survive the economy crash? That alone will probably kill at least as many people as are contracting this COVID-19 virus, and actually it might even kill more. So listen, it's important that we have perspective, compassion, and love to support the people who are affected with all of our heart and soul, while we keep life moving the way that it can move to keep us all inspired, powerful, functioning at 100% for maybe 100 years and beyond. We'll talk about that longevity capacity in just a minute and how these epidemics and pandemics have affected longevity and 100-year-old people. So very important statistic. Another one, also important for you to understand, and why you need to take charge of your own health and not put it in the hands of maybe a hospital or somewhere that you have to go because you didn't take care of yourself properly. Listen, if you are fit and you are a least vulnerable person, at least you know you did everything that you could do. But if you're a most vulnerable person, you are probably sitting back in tremendous fear, worried about becoming a victim. We do not want you to feel that way. We do not want you to have to feel that way. And even if you're way overweight and you're doing so many of these things wrong, every time you make one change in the right direction to become less vulnerable, you move towards being a least vulnerable person, and you do more to protect yourself than anything else by changing some of these habits. And when you look at these numbers, this is an extreme epidemic as far as I'm concerned that should be addressed. When you look at the statistics that medical errors, mistakes are responsible for 251,000 deaths a year in the United States alone. It is the third leading cause of death. These numbers were just actually lowered from 400,000 deaths because they changed the way they're monitoring the statistics. So when you think about it, it's 600,000 deaths per day compared to 9 deaths per day with COVID-19. Why is this important for you in making the changes to become a least vulnerable person? It's important because you do not want to put yourself in the position to become one of those statistics. You make yourself more at risk by having more vulnerable habits, most vulnerable habits, and needing care that could make you even more vulnerable, which I'm not criticizing the people that are doing their jobs and the great people that are trying their hardest to help us. We're grateful for them. It's a reality and a fact that way too many mistakes are made that are contributing to, nobody's doing it on purpose, just like nobody ever plans to become an addict. The reality is, though, it's happening. So when you make the changes that you know as a result of this presentation, you make the changes that you know you need to make, you make yourself least vulnerable and you put yourself in a position to function at a much higher level for a lifetime. And then when you look at things like the flu, these numbers are not even near as much as the other ones we just talked about. But listen, if we apply the principles to COVID-19 that we have applied to the flu, we're still having lots and lots of people die. It is not effective what is being done to contain the flu. Why? Because the war on germs is not going to work because we have to live in harmony with germs. So we must do the things that need to be done to make ourselves less vulnerable so that we are less susceptible. It's interesting. For me personally, a lot of people will ask, Dr. Plasker, why should we listen to what you're saying? What is it about what you've learned? Well, I'll give you some insight. First of all, I'm an international best-selling author. I'm humbled and appreciative of all the people in all the different countries that have bought, listened to, learned from the 100-Year Lifestyle. I've spoken all over the world. I've been a keynote speaker all over the world, Italy, Scotland, Canada, United States, all over. We have affiliates that have spoken all over the country and all over the world. And so people have respected the opinions about the things that we're talking about all over the world. And certainly been featured on lots of news medias. You can check us out if you want to. But I think what's even more important than that and more relevant than that is that I've been in practice for 35 years. We've seen thousands and thousands and thousands of patients. I have never missed a day of work because of illness in 35 years. We've had patients come in with flus. We've had patients come in with all kinds of health problems, and we have helped them, and I have never gotten sick from any of those people. And I speak to my colleagues that are least vulnerable people, many of our affiliates that you can find on our website. They're least vulnerable people. They take care of themselves really well for the most part, not all of them, but for the most part. And we have not missed days of work. I'm 57 years old. I have a family history. Think about this for a minute. I have a family history of heart disease. I have a family history of cancer. I do not have longevity in my family. My father had a heart attack at 49 years old, started taking all kinds of medication, died at the age of 78. We didn't know him for the last 10 years of his life, or I should say he didn't know us for the last decade of his life because of the side effects of the medication that he was taking as a result of that, because it was not tested for long-term use, and it did affect his brain and his memory. Like many of you may be taking those types of medications, and it is going to affect your memory if you don't find a least vulnerable solution for yourself. And so for me, with a family history of heart disease and cancer, I have no medical history. None. Haven't had a medication. I had a doctor come by and test me and took my blood and took my history and said, so how many medications are you on? I said, none. How many hospitalizations? None. And the reality of it doesn't mean I haven't needed care. I've just kept myself well adjusted. I had a concussion, had it taken care of through chiropractic care, functional neurology, alternative types of things that have made a difference for me. And I was speaking and repeating myself over and over again. That's how messed up I was Fortunately, I did get better because of the things that we did, and I can have this conversation with you because we have learned how to be least vulnerable people so that we can respond if something does happen very quickly because we are healthy to begin with going into any type of injury. So with no personal medical history, zero medication, understanding what it's like to eliminate weight and get off the roller coaster, not be on the roller coaster, and working with thousands and thousands of patients, and then training doctors around the country and around the world. We have learned a lot that we want to share with you so you can make yourself a least vulnerable person. And yes, this is a time that has caused us to have this conversation with you, and it probably should have happened anyway, but usually for most people, it takes a crisis to get them to act. Well, we want you to make lifestyle care, 100-year lifestyle decisions to support you in living your best life every single day. People are asking me in our 100-year community, patients, doctors, we get text messages, emails, all kinds of correspondence where people say, you know what, Dr. Plasker, what does this have to do with longevity and the 100-year lifestyle? Well, I think it's empowering what I'm about to say to you because this is really important. 100-year-old people have lived through multiple epidemics, multiple pandemics. So SARS and some of the other COVID types of strains that we've seen over the years, flu and epidemics, flu pandemics. So people that are 100 years old today, which are the world's fastest growing group percentage-wise, or one of the fastest growing groups percentage-wise, they have lived through major wars. They've lived through the Great Depression. They've lived through 22 recessions and the Great Recession. They lived through stock market crashes, housing crises, banking crises, all kinds of tragedies and situations that the news would have you be addicted to. And guess what? Some of them are still here, and so are you. And how have they made it? What's their secret? What's very interesting, there's an article on 100yearlifestyle.com. It's called Trends, Casualties, and Control. We also have a podcast with that same name. It's called Trends, Casualties, and Control. And what's important about the understanding of this is that the trend is continuing, that people are living longer than ever. And there will be casualties along the way. And you have control over the things that you can control. What you eat, how you move, your posture, the alignment of your body, your spine, your nervous system, the environment that you create, the thoughts that you think. You have control of the way that you live your life. And by taking control, because you're still here, then you can make these choices right now to make you a least vulnerable person. We call it 100% for 100 years. You'll see on some of our pages on our website, lots of people wearing 100 shirts, workout shirts. They're 100% for 100 years. It's a good goal, and it sure beats 63% for 87 years, like so many of our beloved seniors that didn't know they were going to live this long, so they didn't know how to take care of themselves to ensure quality of life as they age. We have a population that was blindsided by their extended life. And so we look at our beautiful children. We need to make 100-year lifestyle type choices that keep our children less vulnerable, that raise them less vulnerable, that keep them not addicted to drugs, but create for them a healthy lifestyle that they can be excited about. We have an article called Children's Longevity Threatened, and it's on 100yearlifestyle.com, where the United States is an example. We have the first generation of children that are seeing their potential life expectancy flatten on the curve or go down. Why? Because we have so many neurologically damaged kids, and we have so many neurologically damaged seniors. We are putting our children in jeopardy with the way we are raising them. So it becomes important that we think differently about how we raise our children. We did a great podcast with Erica, and I forget the name of the podcast right now, but it's about her raising a family, raising her child, and making different choices for her child. And as an autistic child who was not speaking, he was not verbal, in a very short period of time, within 1 or 2 visits, he started speaking. His posture improved. He started standing up straighter. All kinds of different things changed. We need to take a look at how we are raising our children, the choices that we're making for children. And we need to question vaccination schedules and and what's in the vaccination. We need to support organizations like the ICANN Network for Informed Consent, so that we know that before we put anything, especially mandate, anything that we inject into our child, we know for sure that it is safe before we blanket it and make it required for every man, woman, and child. So as you look at what's happening with this COVID-19 situation, there are in the works fast track, no testing vaccinations that have all kinds of bad ingredients, toxic ingredients in them. We then need to make sure that everything is tested and proven before we make it a law and make informed consent, individual consent, a priority. And in doing so, by making sure that we're safe and healthy, we can raise and have a much least vulnerable society where people are functioning at their highest level for a lifetime and being immune to all of the challenges that may be out there in the environment. You know, when it comes to immunity, I just think about this so often because it's springtime and people are concerned about allergies and the pollen, and they're allergic to the pollen. You know, here's what's very interesting. The allergy situation in this country and in other countries where there's all these kinds of sprays and chemicals that have been proven to cause all types of health problems. We have been taught to believe that we are allergic to the flowers and the trees, when the reality of it is we are not allergic to the grass, the flowers, and the trees. Most of us who are allergic and having reactions are allergic to the chemicals on the grass, the flowers, and the trees. And if you make the changes in how you live your life and what you put in your environment, and you take charge of those things, you make yourself a much least vulnerable person. Let's look at some of these ways, these changes that you can make to make you less vulnerable right now. The first one is the power of positive thinking. And to me, that's exciting, and it should be for you, because what that means is if you change your thoughts, you can make yourself less vulnerable. Come on, how cool is that? If you change your thoughts, you can make yourself less vulnerable. And that video or that article that I told you about, the movie of you, which is also, we talk about it in a lot of our podcasts. If you take that concept from right now, when you start to catch yourself in negative thoughts, fear, worry, panic, you can take charge of yourself literally in a split second by making a choice. Say, you know what, I'm panicking, take a deep breath, and make a positive choice to think differently. And believe it or not, simple changes like that can improve your immune system. When you look at it, it is very true. Statistically, the power of positive thinking, it plays out for you. I love this. People with a family history of heart disease who also has a positive outlook were 1/3 less likely to have a heart attack or other cardiovascular event within 5 to 25 years than those who had a more negative outlook. I mean, that's a significant number. That's a significant change. So if you are my whole life is caught up in the panic, and I have all kinds of relationships where we all panic together and we feed the panic and we create this disease of panic. We end up creating immune deficiencies within each other, and we end up creating a self-fulfilling prophecy, because through panicking, we lower our immune systems, we make ourselves more vulnerable, whereas if you make these choices to become more positive, you immediately become less vulnerable with every single choice that you make. And some of you that are really negative and some of you that are really panicky, you may say, you know what, wow, that means I'm going to have to watch myself like I'm watching a movie and make these changes 1,000 times a day. You know what, that may be true. That means you're addicted to panic. Well, guess what? You stay consistent and you stay persistent. And then what happens is now you only have to make this change 100 times a day. And then you have to make it only 10 times a day. And then maybe only once a day, because you have become a positive person. You make that choice first thing in the morning. And then maybe you only have to do it once a month, and then maybe once a quarter, and then maybe once a year, because you have reinvented yourself. And listen, come on, if you can't control yourself, don't try to control the rest of the world, because the only one that you could truly control is yourself. So take charge of your panic and your neurosis and your nervous system through these choices and make yourself a least vulnerable person. Positive thinking improves physical health. We've known this for a long time. That one recent study, for example, polled healthy first-year law students at the beginning of the school year to find out how optimistic they felt about the upcoming year. By the middle of the first semester, the students had been confident that they would do well, had more and better functioning immune cells than the worried students. And then they continued on that the levels of destructive hormones in your bloodstream will go up when you are a more vulnerable person. So positive thinking changes that. And every single one of you could start making those choices right now. And guess what? If you're still concerned about the virus, which quite honestly, for me and my family, because we're a less vulnerable family, we are not incompassionate or not compassionate about everybody. We are. That's why we're making this presentation. And at the same time, it's important that you understand that you have a choice and to make choices that make you less vulnerable, least vulnerable right now. We know, Scientific American, that happiness can boost the immune system. And when you look at the statistics, we've known about this since the 1960s. Norman Cousin is the first one that really started this when he talked about anatomy of an illness, where he had a life-threatening autoimmune disease and he healed himself through laughter. He started watching Marx Brothers movies and way outlived what they expected. He decided not to believe the prognosis. He got positive in his mind and chose not to believe the prognosis. At the time, mainstream science rejected any of these ideas, but then what they found out through the research, they found out that the brain is directly wired to the immune system. So your thoughts can have an impact over the immune system. The flow of messages over your brain to your body through your spinal cord can help affect and impact the quality of your health in your life and the immune system. I believe without a doubt that one of the main reasons why I haven't been sick, fortunately, in my life, and we have raised healthy children who are also doctors of chiropractic and have been blessed to not be sick children, and we raise them to be healthy. One of the reasons is because they got adjusted lifestyle chiropractic care. It kept their spine and nervous system stress-free and out of balance so that this pathway could be clear. And when you look at the connections, they have a clinical relevance because one of the first researchers to show this was a virologist. We're talking about a virus here. One of the first researchers that discovered this was a virologist, Ronald Glaser, who's now the director for behavioral medicine research at Ohio State University in Columbus. He said, when I started working on this in the 80s, nobody believed what stress could do, including me. And then he and his colleagues sampled blood from medical students and found that during stressful exam periods, they had lower activity from virus-fighting immune cells. They had lower immune activity from virus-fighting immune cells and higher levels of antibodies for the common virus Epstein-Barr, suggesting that stress had compromised their immune systems. So listen, the media is insane right now. They would love for you to stay glued, stay sitting, stay inside, and stay stressed. And when you do that, you have to understand, my friends, you have to understand that you are becoming a more vulnerable person. You got to get up. You got to take charge of your health. You got to take charge of your life in this way. Studies have found that people exposed to these various kinds of stresses have changes in their immune system. The research suggests that immune system's proliferative response decreases by 15% and continues to decrease in chronically stressful situations. We are transforming. There is a transformation right now that is, if I would let it scare me, it would scare me. Because we are creating a stressed out society that is going to live in fear. We are fear-centered, fear-focused. We worry about every little tiny thing. And these are the only things that are reported on the news. Come on, we need to block out the world and take care of ourselves and find support systems that will help you be strong, be least vulnerable in the way that your immune system functions so that you can make choices for 80, 90, 100 years and beyond. You know, these 100-year-old people, none of them plan to get to 100. These are a generation that have outlived their scientifically predicted life expectancy by 5 decades. And when you understand that, these are people that are resilient. Most of them are people that did not overcome a serious disease. These are people that never got sick in the first place. And so what's important for you is that you do everything that you can to make yourself a least vulnerable person. Again, starting with your thoughts and having a positive attitude. We know that stress leads to premature and unhealthy aging. According to a study by the National Academy of Sciences, stress shortens telomeres, the caps on your genes, and increases oxidative stress, which can lead to premature aging of your cells, which makes you a more vulnerable person. So there's lots of things on 100yearlifestyle.com if you want to go to it. There's lots of resources available to you through BrainTap, one of our favorite partners in this, to help you. Great article on 4 brain healthy solutions. Get your body moving, get your mind moving, prioritizing sleep, practicing mindfulness. These are all things that you can do to make yourself a least vulnerable person starting right now. Next, exercise, fitness, so important. We do know that exercise supports a healthy immune system. There is a compelling link between physical activity and the body's defense system. Come on, we all know that. We know that instinctively. We need to get up and start moving. And just some of the highlights from this article that appeared in 2019 in the Journal of Sport and Health Science. We know that acute exercise is an immune system adjuvant that improves defense activity and metabolic health. So when you start moving, you improve the quality of your immune system. Data supports a clear evidence in an inverse relationship between moderate exercise, training, and illness risk. So if you have more exercise, more moderate training, your risk of infection goes down. So important that you understand that. Get up off your bottom. Exercise training has an anti-inflammatory influence mediated through multiple pathways: your brain, your spinal cord, your nerves, your cardiovascular system. Everything works better. Anti-inflammatory, multiple ways. Inflammation, we know, can cause all kinds of autoimmune problems. It can contribute to heart disease. It can lead to all kinds of neurological issues in your body. So exercise is really important. We have a lot of people who come in who are fitness-oriented people. When they start coming in to see us, they are concerned because they think they're fit. They think everything is a muscle. That's not true. So you have to understand that, yes, exercise supports a healthy immune system. We know that increased carbohydrate and polyphenol intake is an effective nutritional strategy. We'll talk about some nutrition in just a little bit. And we know, without any question, that habitual exercise improves immune regulation. So come on, everybody's got to get up and start moving. We have an acronym for fitness in the world of the 100-year lifestyle, and we say that if you want to be fit and healthy for the long haul, then you have to have these 5 pillars. It's N squared, ESS, and it's neurology, nutrition, endurance, strength, and structure, where neurology is important and neurology comes first. Why does neurology come first? Because neurology is about function. Everything to function properly, everything in your body requires nerve supply. Your heart, your cells, your liver, your kidneys, your stomach, your lungs, your muscles, everything requires nerve supply for you to function properly. So neurology equals function. Nutrition equals fuel. You are what you eat. Your body, what you eat, your body uses it for fuel. So eating healthy is important. Endurance equals longevity. Endurance training is important. Why? Because if you're going to live to 80, 90, 100 years and beyond, that's a long haul right there. So keeping yourself healthy in a way where you're training yourself for longevity is vital. Cardiovascular exercise, strength training. Listen, we've all seen an older person struggle to get out of a chair. And once you lose your strength, it's very hard to get it back. And then structure, that's your posture, your body. We have all heard the quote by Thomas Edison, which he made in 1903, that has never been more relevant than it is today. His quote was, "The doctor of the future will give no medicine, but will interest his patients in the care of the human frame, in diet, and in the cause and prevention of disease." I think way ahead of his time, but very thoughtful and very right on target. We actually changed the quote in the 100-year lifestyle. We now say the doctor of the present will give no medicine, but will interest his patients in the care of the human frame, in diet, and in the cause and prevention of dis-ease. And let me clarify that. Will give no medicine unless it's a last resort. Doing everything to get you healthy without it first is the way to live if you want to live an active, healthy, long life. And you know what? The rest of the world agrees with that, because in the United States, we have 5% of the world's population and we take 95% of the world's drugs, and we have the worst life expectancy compared to any other industrialized nation. So this is an important conversation for you and I to have so that you can make choices moving forward that keep you healthy for the long haul. We know the nervous system, your body's nervous system, it's inside of you. It's your body's natural IT system. It's your body's natural information technology system. We know that without this IT system working at all, life is not possible, that cells die, tissues die, organs die. We know that to be true. In fact, when you look at the interconnection, this is from Science Daily, the interconnection between the nervous system and the immune system is well documented. We know that researchers have found that the increased incidence of infections is seen in spinal cord injury patients, and it's directly linked to the disruption of the normal central nervous system. So this is an important thing for all of us as we understand the nervous system, our body's natural IT system, that when there's severe damage to the IT system where it's not working at all, that it affects directly the function of your immune system. But that's not the only way that the nervous system can be affected. We know that if there's interference to the IT system, if there's miscommunication or insufficient communication, then health is not possible. Nothing works the way that it's supposed to. Cells, tissues, and organs that are requiring nerve supply for communication, for hormone response, for function, for immunity, these messages are not clear. They're altered. And we call this, when it happens in the spine, it's a vertebral subluxation. We see this in our patients all the time. Other people see it in other types of industries all the time where there's interference to the nervous system. Health is not possible. So the heart, lungs, liver, kidneys, back, neck, stomach, wherever those nerves are supposed to be supplying messaging, because those messages get altered, the health goes down. So we become more vulnerable people. With your nervous system working right, health can be your natural state. So everything can work the way that it's supposed to. Heart, lungs, liver, kidneys, muscles, all of those things have the capability to work the way that they're supposed to. Doesn't mean there might not be something else that could be wrong, but at least it has the potential to work the way that it's supposed to because it's getting the right nerve supply. And then if you optimize your IT system with great quality care, all the things that we've talked about in this presentation, then you can express your full potential for a lifetime. We call it 100% for 100 years. We know that the nervous system supports your body's ability to adapt. It's made up of the nerve cells throughout your entire body. It communicates with the outside world so that your body can respond. It triggers, processes informations, reactions that are supportive of your health on every level that you can imagine. And what the challenge is, one of the challenges that we see in our practice, one of the challenges that we see a lot of our affiliates around the country and people in our profession, chiropractors around the country and around the world, we know that there is an epidemic of nerve disorders that is out there. It is flooding our offices, people lining up because it's good quality care that is supportive of people naturally improving the health of their nervous system. And when you look at this epidemic, this is on 100yearlifestyle.com. This article went viral, and it talks about how this is a quote from Dr. Zeev. It's a MD. His name is Robert Zeev. He recently wrote that neurological disorders, the growing epidemic of the 21st century, that chronic neurological diseases are fast becoming the debilitating epidemic of our time, way more significant than COVID-19. Way more significant, affecting way more people. We see this in memory care centers. We see this with autistic kids needing all kinds of neurological development support. And we see this with people with all types of chronic medication uses, people that are affected by chemicals in the environment. This is a serious problem. This is an epidemic that requires all of us to take action, because if you improve the health of your nervous system, it can make you a less vulnerable, least vulnerable person. One of the things that Dr. Zeev says, he says, having a healthy brain and nervous system is vital to being able to think clearly, without which our active will lacks intelligent guidance and becomes weakened. So it weakens our will and it weakens the intelligence within to keep us functioning properly, the innate intelligence that we all have inside of us. He also says, and this is super important, I talked about this with the flowers and the trees a little bit earlier. He says that a healthy nervous system is essential for you to be able to adapt to your environment in a healthy way. Dr. Ziv states that we live in a toxic world, The great majority of chemicals we now take in daily were not even on the planet 30 years ago. These toxins become neurotoxins, damaging the nervous system. Listen, this is an epidemic that all of us need to be taken care of and exploring. No wonder that our profession, like other health professions, chiropractors are considered essential healthcare providers because of the relationship that we have with the nervous system and helping people stay out of hospitals because there's an easier way to get fixed for the people that are available for the type of care that we provide. And there's a lot of sick fit people out there. We see a lot of sick fit people that they have a six-pack in their gut, but their nervous system, other parts of their body are broken down because they're on all kinds of medications. Don't be a sick fit person. Make the health of your nervous system, make these other changes that we've talked about on every level an important part of what you do and how you live your life so you become a least vulnerable person. I can go on and on about the mind, healing in the mind. The immune system cannot function without nerve supply. That is such an important concept. We know that oxidative stress can affect RNA and DNA in a negative way. Oxidative stress metabolically generating free radicals in the body is broadly accepted as a theory of how we age and develop disease. Oxidative stress results in DNA damage and inhibits DNA repair. This is important to understand. Are you going to go inside and play with your own DNA? No, but understand that the changes that we are talking about making will help eliminate oxidative stress, so that your body has an ability to adapt and you stay a least vulnerable person. We see it, one of the reasons why chiropractic care has been effective is because chiropractic can influence oxidative stress, which in turn can influence DNA repair. And so we know that it's essential. Having a healthy nervous system is essential through every phase of life. Having a healthy nervous system is essential at any time, whether it's right at the birth process, maybe even in the womb, and through every phase of growth and development, a healthy nervous system must become a priority. We know that as people age, that stress inside your nervous system, stress inside the structure of your body can affect the nervous system. These are three people, as an example, who are exactly the same age. You can find this in an article on 100yearlifestyle.com called A Picture's Worth 1,000 Words. When you look at this, you see that these are three people that are in their mid-50s. One has a healthy alignment with good spacing in between the bones, no health problems, no decay. Here's another 50-year-old person that has deterioration in one area. They've done crisis care only their whole life. They just live from crisis to crisis to crisis, so they feel better while they degenerate. That's so important. So many of you that are just covering up symptoms with medication, you make yourself feel better while the cause of your problems continue to cause decay within you. We do not want that to happen. That makes you a more vulnerable person. We want you to be less vulnerable. And here's one has had no care at all, just medication, covering up pain, severe degeneration at multiple levels throughout their body. And when you look at this, you have to understand that all of these people are exactly the same age. So quality of life, longevity, resistance, vulnerability, really in the long run has nothing to do with age. You have people that are seniors that are completely healthy, highly functional. They're less vulnerable to these infections, but their counterparts in the assisted living centers maybe, or the active centers, or the places that they live, their counterparts, their contemporaries that have chronic conditions or where they have become more vulnerable, you realize, you know what? It's not necessarily the age. I remember one of the first things I read about D.D. Palmer, who was a magnetic healer when he came upon this principle of the nervous system and started to teach it to the world through the chiropractic profession. He's got a famous quote. What intrigued him was that he asked the question, why do two people sitting at the same table, eating the same food that may be the same age, why does one get sick and one doesn't? And that's a very important question, as we have a world that is filled with more vulnerable people and least vulnerable people. The least vulnerable people are the majority by far. The more vulnerable people, we need to help them become less vulnerable, not disable them, but help them become less vulnerable, while every single one of us lives a least vulnerable life. And so, aging, all of us, hopefully, if we do these things, we'll live at 100% for 100 years, much better than 79% for 81 years. Of course, like we kind of joked about a little bit earlier. And so let's talk about some nutrition things as we fly through the rest of this presentation. If you like what we're talking about, go to our podcast, go to 100yearlifestyle.com, visit one of our affiliates, but take care of yourself in a way that makes you a least vulnerable person. When it comes to nutrition, nourish your body for optimum function. It will counter the effects of stress. So eat organic food, non-toxic food, live foods, plant-based diets as the majority are best. Lots of fruits and vegetables, all kinds of colors, not all kinds of chemicals. Remember, organic, non-GMO, those kinds of things. Fruits and vegetables, plant-based protein is great. Vegetables, dark and colorful, like we just said. Buckwheat, soba noodles, chickpeas, beans, edamame, lentils, lots of good nutritious stuff. Tofu, quinoa, spirulina, nuts and seeds, nut butters are great. Whole oats and whole grains, brown rice, lean meats are all good, healthy foods that will make you less vulnerable. Always choose quality calories over empty calories. Empty calories are things that, and also toxic calories, which are processed foods, canned foods, white rice, white flour, white pasta. These are all making you less vulnerable. They are not filled with good nutrition. Avoid sugar, avoid sodas, minimize caffeine and alcohol, and supplement your diet with anti-inflammatory type of quality organic resources that are really, really, really good for you. So good nutrition is important. Nursing Nutrition and Nerve Supply for new moms, very important information there to support you. And then as we wind down, a couple of other key points with this social distancing that's going on and everybody being afraid to be around each other. Well, I'm going to tell you to follow the law and don't break the law. That's the first thing. And at some point, we have to understand that community equals immunity. People with stronger communities have stronger immunities. We know that social relationships, both quantity and quality, affect mental health, health behavior, physical health, and mortality risk. Social isolation of otherwise healthy, well-functioning individuals eventually results in psychological and physical disintegration, even death. Come on, my brothers, my sisters, my family, my friends, my new friends. This is so important that we understand how to become least vulnerable people. So, and understanding that doing that as a community is more important than ever. Share this video with your friends, your family, on your social media pages. Follow us on all of our social media pages. Visit us at 100yearlifestyle.com. Check out our podcast. Become a part of this community to help you live at 100% for 100 years, not 63% for 79 years. So important. Toxins are everywhere. Be aware of them. Beware of the overuse of technology and how it affects your body and your posture, the radiation of that, the chemistry of that, the dysfunction that it can cause in your spine and your nervous system as a result of poor posture. Great articles on 100yearlifestyle.com, smartphone syndrome. Another great article called Hunchbacks in the Hood that will help you give you solutions to the technology issues, because toxins and technology, no question, an overuse of all that can affect your health and quality of life in so many different ways. We see it. Glyphosate, also authoritatively classified as a human carcinogen. That's a toxin thing. That's the chemical that's on a lot of in Roundup and on a lot of the chemicals that are put in the foods that are not organic. And so important that you understand that. As we really wind down here, great article on 100yearlifestyle.com. What happens when you stop? Whenever you stop doing the things that are good for you, you will get less good. Because when you do the things that are good for you, they're just good for you. And when you stop, your body will become less healthy. So if you want to be a least vulnerable person, make the things that are good for you your new lifestyle. That's what the 100-year lifestyle is all about, is making all the things that are good for you your new lifestyle, not a weight loss plan just to fit into a dress or a pair of jeans, but a lifestyle that supports you at functioning at a very high level. So learn to love the things that are good for you. I love one of the podcasts that we did with Dr. Adam Coxon and his wife, Jamie. The title of that is, We Are Not Just Lucky. I love the title of that because people will say to them, well, you're just lucky that you're so skinny. You're just lucky that your kids are so healthy. And I love what they say in there. They say, you know what? Thank you. And yes, maybe we are lucky. We're not just lucky. We are doing the things that make us less vulnerable people. And by doing the things that make us less vulnerable people, we're luckier. And so you can be one of the lucky ones too. You can be not just lucky, but you'll be a lot more lucky if you make the changes that you know you need to make. Make 100-year lifestyle choices, not 50, 40, 60, or 70-year lifestyle choices, so that you love the things that are good for you and you make them your new lifestyle. And listen, if you were here, I would give you a big hug because you have stuck through this presentation, which I hope has empowered you. I hope it has supported you in living your best life every day for 80, 90, 100 years and beyond, getting you healthier today. And if you're healthier today and you make these changes that make you healthier today, you will just organically, like the rest of these 100-year-old people that didn't die when science thought they would, you will live longer than you ever thought with better quality years and enjoy the journey, which is even more important. You will enjoy a healthier journey along the way because of these choices. And we know that hugs do build the immune system. Hey, hugs kill bugs. Come on, I love that. We know that hugs make us feel warm and fuzzy. And this feeling that it turns out could actually ward off stress and protect the immune system, according to new research from Carnegie Mellon University. So listen, big hugs to you. Stimulating your immune system. Share this information with family, friends, coworkers. It is time that we take charge of our health, take charge of our lives, become least vulnerable people, and get the world moving again so that we can all live at 100% for 100 years. And that's the kind of world that I want to live in. I don't want to live in a world where everybody's scared to go outside, everybody's scared to hug, everybody's scared to touch each other, everybody's getting 72 injections because that's what somebody in an office somewhere who's got a couple of extra $1 billion tells us we should get it. No, I want to live in a world where we're all functioning at the highest level that we possibly can for a lifetime. And we're not afraid of each other, but we're collaborating with each other to make this world the best place that it could possibly be. So with that, my friends, your 100 is coming. You make the call. Yes, the trend is moving in this direction. Yes, there will be casualties along the way, and we don't want you to be one of them. We want you to function at your best, your healthiest, with the strongest immune system possible, being a least vulnerable person so that you can live at 100% for 100 years and beyond. Thanks so much for watching. Dr. Eric Plasker, great to be with you today.